Hello, welcome along to Sportsbet TV. Paul Alster here with you once again. I hope you're all very well, and we're looking forward to the second and third days of the Chester May meeting, where I have a total of 4 selections for you across the 2 days. So I hope you'll hang on and stay with me for those. Remember that if you haven't already subscribed, or if you're new to this tipping service, then do press the subscribe button just below this screen, and that'll keep you in touch with all my messages and any updates that I may send out. Remember as well to share this video as well with friends who you think might be interested in backing horses at decent each way prices, because that's what I'm all about. Now, very quickly, I want to go over last weekend, where all in all, it was a good weekend for us. I had a very rare win bet, and it won. That was Sir Ron Priestley, who was recommended at 5-2, and he made all the running in the Jockey Club Stakes, and he won really impressively. I know Mark Johnston thinks a lot of him, and he's got a variety of potential targets. For me, I'd say that something like the Irish St. Ledger would be the perfect race for Sir Ron Priestley, looking a bit later on in the season. I hope you were on him. Now, of the other 3, 2 of them placed at really good odds. Jur and Me finished 4th in a big handicap chase over at Punchestown, ran really well. And of course, Fev Rover, well, didn't she do well, as Brucey used to say. A very good third in the 1,000 guineas. And Richard Farr, his very high opinion of this filly, was very much on the mark. First time cheek pieces just kept her in the action right from the start. She was never far away, and she didn't half stick on well up the hill to the line to just rest 3rd place, back off Santa Barbara, who was a too short a prize favourite, as I pointed out, but actually ran very well, I thought, and she does look an Oaks filly in the making. But Fev Rover, something like the French Oaks, I think might be a good target for her. And she did run really well, and I hope you were on each way there at 22-1, the SP. Now, the only one that didn't make it to the frame was Devil Waller in the 2,000 guineas. He ran well enough. He tried to chase that extraordinarily fast early pace set by the Godolphin 2nd or 3rd string, was it? And in the end, he weakened from just inside the 2 furlong from home marker, and he didn't really threaten at any point. The funny thing is, if you'd said to me that he'd finish just a neck behind a Wembley and in front of Thunder Moon before the race started, I'd be pretty sure we'd be right close to the money. But as it happened, they all finished out the back, with the Dewhurst form turned on its head by the excellent performance of Jim Bolger's Poetic Flair, who was actually my second choice, and I did debate about whether to put it up because his only poor run came on soft ground in the Dewhurst, and he was a tremendously gutsy and game winner of the 2,000 guineas. Well, that was last weekend, and thanks to those of you that left some very kind comments. I'm really glad to hear that you had these in each way doubles and trebles and all sorts of combinations. And we're going on to Chester, which is one of my very favourite race courses. I'm usually there at this meeting. I go to the Chester May meeting and then on to the York Dante fixture, but this year, of course, it's just not possible. And actually, the second day of the Chester meeting, for me, is a really significant day as far as my punting ideology is concerned, because it was on Ormond Stakes Day 35 years ago, believe it or not, in 1986, that I had a bit of an epiphany. Very briefly, I'll just tell you about this because it's worth, taking note of these things and why I bet the way I do. At the time, I was probably one of the youngest ever racing commentators in Britain. I was working for EXTEL, which came before SIS, and I was doing the commentaries for them. And I had a day off and I didn't go down to Chester, but I really fancied a horse who was miles clear on the figures in the Ormond Stakes. Now, there'd been a lot of rain and the ground was soft, maybe even heavy in places, but the horse in question was a great horse called Shadari. And Shadari came to Chester 35 years ago and was forecast a shade of odds on. And I'd gone through the race backwards and forwards, and I couldn't see a way that he could be beaten, because the nearest to him on the figures was a horse that was rated some way behind. I decided to bet odds on. And at the time, I remember I had £50 on to win 40 at 4 to 5. And that was a pretty decent bet for me. And I went up to my local William Hill's office and I went in to listen to the race and just to enjoy the experience of making 40 quid for nothing, really. And the race panned out perfectly well, despite the very, very testing ground. Shadari improved, going down the back straight at Chester for the final time. He moved into the lead. I think it was about 2.5 furlongs out. And going down to the final furlong, and the commentator, which of course was just a speaker on the wall in those days, was saying that he'd gone clear by 3 or 4 lengths. And further back in the field, there was a hurdler called Brunico who was beginning to stay on. Inside the final furlong, I'm already counting the cash, and I hear the commentator say that Shadari's stride beginning to shorten in the heavy ground, Brunico running on. And a long story short, Brunico got up in the shadow of the post, a 33 to 1 shot, a hurdler to beat Shadari. And I was absolutely gutted. And I said to myself then, I am not going to be playing short odds. It really is a mug's game. Now, the ground can always have such an effect on horses. Of course, it can make good horses a lot slower than they normally would be if that's not their preferred surface. And the proof was that Shadari actually went on. He'd already been a good horse, but he had a great season. He went on to be, he won the Prince of Wales's stakes at Ascot, his next race. Then he was second to Dancing Brave in the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth stakes at Ascot, and he went on to be 5th in probably the greatest ever arc of all time, the one won by Dancing Brave in 1986, when Pat Edry came sweeping by them all, and that probably was the best ever arc because there were 10 Group 1 winners in a line as they raced just inside the final furlong. Shadari finished 5th. He was by far the best horse in the race, but the ground and maybe 1 or 2 other factors undid him, and that's why betting odds on, for me, for the most part, is a mug's game, and that's why the bookies drive big cars and most of us don't. So this was 35 years ago, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to rectify things for this week at Chester by putting in a few winners for you. And I'll go first to Thursday at Chester, the 1:45, the first race of the day there, a 5 furlong handicap. Well, Jabberwock is a likely favourite here for Eric Alston. He won at Musselburgh last time out. Just a short head, he's gone up £3. He's an 8-year-old and surprisingly has never run on this track, which for me is a bit of a concern. Anthony Britton has a horse called Mandami, who's in good form after a win at Pontefract last time, but has gone up £7. And David Evans does very well at Chester. He's got a horse called Lihu, and he's booked William Buick. And this one has won 2 of his 4 starts at Chester and finished 2nd on the other 2 occasions. And for me, he will be the biggest danger to my selection. The other one likely to be fairly prominent in the market is Mackinac, who goes on soft ground, rated 103, though he's got to give a lot of weight away, and he'll do really well, I think, to do it. Now, my selection is called Copper Knight, and he's trained by Tim Easterby and is the mount of James Sullivan. And just before I've recorded this race for you on Wednesday afternoon, I've just seen Tim Easterby have the winner of the 3rd race on day 1 at Chester, a horse called Show Along, won the day 1 handicap sprint. So that's a really good pointer as well. I was pleased to see that towards the chance at Copper Knight. I hope it doesn't impact too much on Copper Knight's price. Now, Tim Easterby also runs Count D'Orsay, who is not without a chance in this race, and he's won on soft ground at Haydock last season. But Copper Knight, I think, has a massive chance. He's a 7-year-old who's 2 from 4 in his visits at Chester, and he goes on any ground, and he's drawn in stall 3. And I think he's going to go really well, especially when you take into account that in his run against Mackinac, last season, when he was beaten a short head at Newmarket last June, he's now £24 better off for a short head. Now, admittedly, the top weight on Thursday improved a lot in the second half of last season, but that's a massive turnaround. And this horse, Copper Knight, has run in this race before. Indeed, he won the 2017 renewal, and I think he's been laid out for the race. Conditions are just about ideal. I saw that early betting he was put in at 8-1 with one or two firms. Now the best I can see is the 7-1 offered each way with Bet365. And for 3 places, I think that's pretty good value. So Copper Night in the 145 at Chester on Thursday, and I think 7-1 each way is a fair price. Now, the second race on Thursday that I'm looking at is the second race on the card, the D Stakes. This, of course, something of a Derby trial. It's listed over the extended 1.25 miles. And Aidan O'Brien, that man again. He's won 6 of the last 9 renewals of this race with the likes of Circus Maximus and a horse I love called Rostropovich, went on to do very well in Australia, and Magician. So he really does well in this race. And he's got Ontario in the race, who was placed in a couple of Group 2 races last year over 7 and 8 furlongs. And he was third in the European Free Handicap to Tactical on his first run of the season. He's rated 109. The favourite at the time of this recording is Charlie Appleby's colt, Yibir, who won 2 from 4 last season, a maiden and a conditions race. And he was a good third to Alamcar in the Group 3 Classic Trial, even, at Sandown. He's rated 107. I don't think he'd want it too soft. Good to soft in places, I think, on day 1, but the sun was out, so it may well dry up to good to soft if there's not too much rain. I suppose he'd be okay. The other market leader is a horse called Maximal for Michael Stout, 100 to 30 shot or thereabouts. Really solid 2-year-old form, including a very good second to the Smart One Ruler. And he won a Sandown Mile Novice Stakes in September. He was also second at Newbury over 1.25 miles in April, keeping on. Rated only 92, but Sir Michael sees fit to run him against much higher rated horses, which could be a tip in itself. And then you've got Andrew Balding's Fox's Tales, who's very interesting, an unexposed colt, costs 400,000 guineas. He's by Zophany. He was second on his debut at Kempton in December, and then he very nicely won a Newbury Maiden on the 18th of April, and he's a possible improver. But the horse I'm going with here is one of the outsiders, and his name is Earl's Wood. He's trained by one of my favourite trainers, Johnny Murter, of course, in his time, one of the all-time great jockeys. And his young rider, Ben Cohen, is really making a name for himself. Now, Earlswood is well bred. He's bi-pivotal, so he should like the soft ground, and is a full brother to the Chester Cup winner of 2019, Making Miracles. So no doubt at all that stamina will not be an issue. He cost 160,000 euros, so he was no sort of a bargain basement. He had 3 runs at 2 for the now retired legendary trainer John Ox, and he ran well in all 3 starts. Each one of them won by a decent Aidan O'Brien colt. The first time Van Gogh, the second time Bolshoi Ballet, who's now second favourite for the Derby, and the third time against Arturo Toscanini. So he took on good horses on all 3 starts and showed ability all 3 as a 2-year-old. Then when John Ox retired, he joined Johnny Murter and he made a winning debut at Navan on March the 27th. And if you get a chance to see this race, do take a look because it's worth watching. A mile maiden race, heavy ground. He won it in really good style. Now, he's rated only 86, which is £23 below Ontario, who he meets at level weight. So on the face of it, you'd think he's got no chance. But I've learnt over the years that sometimes you have to try and get into a trainer's mind. And you have to ask yourself, why would a really good trainer like Johnny Murter, or for that matter, Sir Michael Stout, whose Maximal is rated only 92, be putting their horses in at what appear to be really disadvantageous terms, when they could be going for a handicap and building horses up and grabbing some prize money with horses who potentially could be well handicapped? And the answer is because they think or they know they're a lot better than the mark that's been allotted them by the official assessor. If either of those horses run close without winning, then their handicap mark is shot to pieces. For example, Earlswood, rated 86, if he gets beaten a length by Ontario, he's going to be put up £15, maybe more, maybe £20. His handicap mark's gone. So his connections are taking a gamble, but one I believe is a calculated gamble, in that they think he's a lot better than he's demonstrated so far on the racecourse, and he could be improving fast. And I'm prepared to take a chance on that. There are only 7 runners, so betting each way means just 2 places, but I think this horse is going to go really well. And Johnny Murtagh has a great record with his horses that he sends over to Britain. He's had 3 winners from 13 runners on turf in Britain in the last 5 years. And prior to that, he also won the Ebor, of course, and he also won the Group 2 Long Distance Cup at the Champions meeting, both times with 20-1 shots. So he's not frightened of coming to Britain with a horse who the British bookies don't rate. I think he knows what he's doing. I hope so. And at 16-1 each way with Bet365 for 2 places, I think Earlswood is worth a bit of a bet. To spring a surprise in the D Stakes, the 2:15 race at Chester, it might be that for shopping around and as the markets really get going, 1 or 2 firms might go 3 places. So if you're prepared to trade slightly smaller odds, you may find someone prepared to bet 3 places. So Earlswood, Chester, 2:15 on Thursday. And then I'll take you to Friday at Chester. The first of my selections, the 145, a 7.5 furlong handicap, 12 runners. We're expecting good to soft ground. It is really competitive. I've narrowed it down to 2. Those 2 are Brentford Hope for Richard Hughes and Kenzai Warrior. Now, Brentford Hope was a non-runner in the Lincoln. I've already tipped him once this season when he was a non-runner. They've been waiting and waiting for cutting the ground, and it might be that their patience is rewarded. He was one time talked of as being a Derby horse, but he had a setback. But if you saw him win his mile handicap at Haydock last season in autumn on soft ground, you could see this horse has a lot of ability. And it might well be that off a £7 higher mark, he is still ahead of the handicapper, but he could be only about 7-2. And in what is a hot race on a track he's not faced before, very different, of course, to the long galloping straight at Haydock, I've decided eventually to oppose him with Kenzai Warrior. And Kenzai Warrior is trained by Roger Teal and is the mount of Laura Pearson, who's a pretty good apprentice. Now, this horse was 2 from 2 as a juvenile. He was pretty smart. His wins as a 2-year-old included the Group 3 Horace Hill Stakes at Newmarket in heavy ground, so he goes very well with cut underfoot. He made his debut last season, this time last season, running in the 2000 Guineas, where he finished 9th to Kamiko. He was rated 102 then, and that was after stumbling really badly at the start, which set him back. He might well have finished a good deal closer. After that, he was 6th in the Hampton Court Stakes, Group 3 at Royal Ascot. And then he had a 4-month break and disappointed on his last few starts. And then subsequently, he's been gelded. He's down to a mark of 97. And I think that is interesting, especially when you add in Laura Pearson claiming £5. Now, the gelding often makes horses completely transform, and horses that may have rather lost their way as 3-year-olds can suddenly come back, and we see it time and again. They run really well at 4. Now, with Roger Teal's yard in really good form, I think that it could be worth catching Kenzai Warrior first time out. He won first time out as a 2-year-old. He ran very well, considering that he stumbled when 9th in the Guineas as a 3-year-old. And I think he could be the value. He's the complete outsider of the field at 22-1. So with 4 places on offer with William Hill at 22-1, I think that is really good value. The likes of Bet Victor and Sporting Index, if you have accounts with them, are offering 22-1, but at the moment, at the time of this recording, just for 3 places. Now remember, and if you're new to this service, I always say shop around and try and find a bookmaker that's going to give you the best odds guaranteed. So if the SP is bigger than the price you take, you'll get paid at the bigger odds. But 22-1 each way with William Hill, 4 places, Kenzai Warrior in the Chester 145, I think is worth a chance. And then we come to what for many is the big race of the meeting, of course, the Chester Cup. It's a race I absolutely love. 17 runners this year, 2.25 miles. and you can't rule any of them out. Of course, quite a lot of horses didn't make the cut. They're going to run in the consolation race later in the day on Friday. Just a few to bear in mind here who are likely to go well. I think Not So Sleepy for Hughie Morrison is really interesting. He's a very good hurdler, and he's useful, really useful on the flat. He was fourth in last season's Cesarewitch. He's only a couple of pounds higher than that Cesarewitch run, and he'll come fit and well. And he's a bit of a funny sort, bit quirky, and maybe running on this unique, sharp track might really suit him. Dermot Weld has the top weight. Falconate, a horse who won a listed race over 2 miles at Sandown last season and ran creditably in a couple of starts after that. Frankie Dettori booked for Dermot Weld is very eye-catching, so I respect that one despite top weight. Then you've got the Mark Johnston factor. He won this race when it was last run in 2019, and he really makes things complicated here by saddling 5. Hockfeld, the Max We Can, Trumpet Man, Rochester House, and Lucky Deal, and they're all really talented staying handicappers. If I had to choose one, I'd probably say Hockfeld might just be the best of the 5. And then Alan King runs 2. Who Dares wins, who's very useful, and Coeur de Lion, who's a course and distance winner, which is significant, and also, of course, won last season Ascot Stakes. But my selection here is a horse who I think could go really well at a price, and his name is Glencadam Glory, and he's the second of my tips for this bulletin to be trained by Tim Easterby. This time, Jason Hart will take the ride. Now, Glencadam Glory has had a really interesting career. He started off with John Gosden. I think he ran in the colours of John Gosden's wife, Rachel Hood. He won a 2-year-old maiden over a mile. And then as a 3-year-old, he was second in the Lingfield Derby trial to Best Solution. He then ran in the Derby, and he ran pretty well. He ran 9th behind Wings of Eagles, which was a solid effort, before finishing 5th in the Group 2 King Edward VII Stakes at Royal Ascot. He was then off for 10 months and was gelded after that. And then he joined Tim Easterby after having won a race over 1.5 miles, a novice stakes for 4-year-olds when he was long odds on. He also ran in the Henry II Stakes, and a run that really caught my eye when he was still with John Gosden was in the Queen Alexandra Stakes as a 4-year-old, Britain's longest race over 2 3/4 miles on the flat. He was bang there. Indeed, he was disputing the lead a furlong and a half out before just failing to stay the last furlong up the hill in the race that was won by the horse whose name has just gone out of my mind, for Qatar Racing. I think it might have been a Sir Mark Prescott horse, or maybe Johnny Murtagh trained it. I can't remember. Anyway, what it showed is that this horse will certainly stay, and no problems. He will stay. For Tim Easterby, he's done really well. Last season, after 3 or 4 quiet runs, they decided to let him take his chance in the Ebor. And he ran a marvellous race. He came there cruising, actually, 3 furlongs out. Looked like he was going to go and win. Then Fajira Prince went away from him. And then he started fighting back in the closing stages, eventually going under by just half a length. It was a tremendous effort off a mark of 99. And that was a race that Easterby had specifically targeted. And that's significant because apparently since that race, they've been specifically targeting the Chester Cup. He didn't do a great deal after York last season. He's had the one run this season when he was down the field when 11th or 13 behind the Max We Can. If you watch the race, I think it was at Musselburgh, he travelled perfectly well in behind them to 2 furlongs out, then was shaken up. And as a former race reader, I can tell you he wasn't knocked about at all. He just came home steadily. He'll be much better for the run. I think he'll probably reverse placings with quite a few who finished in front of him and who may be taking their chances in the Chester Cup on Friday. The bonus is he's been dropped £4 since then. So he's now £4 lower than when he was just beaten half a length in the Ebor last August. And I think that's a great benefit. He's also drawn 9, which is bang in the middle. So that's perfect. I think to get a good posse, sort of sitting in maybe the first 7 or 8 and then trying to make his ground up. And I'm hoping he handles the track. That's my only question mark about him. But I think at 20 to 1 each way, and with 5 places offered, With Bet Victor, Betfred and Boyle Sports at the time of this recording, I think the 7-year-old Glencadam Glory can give supporters a really good run for their money. It is a very tough race. You do need luck in running, and it can be a real minefield for punting. So maybe keep your bets sensible at Chester. But Glencadam Glory is the last of my 4 for days 2 and 3 of the meeting. So I'll leave them with you. You can consider them and decide whether you want to jump on board or not. Whatever you bet, I wish you the very best of luck. I'll be back Friday afternoon, early Friday evening with my selections for the weekend. So don't forget to join me for those. But for now, from me, Paul Alster, I wish you a really good week. Enjoy the rest of the great racing on the Rudy at Chester. Bye-bye for now.